Hello again, everybody. This is CJ, your local friendly technology addict, and this is the Tech Addict's Attic. I have spent about 4.5 hours over the past 2 days trying to do this video because I don't have any kind of video editing software, so I'm trying to do them in one take. And there's always something, 5, 10, 15 minutes in that, okay, well, there go all my attaboys, and I got to start over from scratch. So I'm trying to get this thing under 10 minutes. It's not going to happen. Try to bear with me. If you have to, go down to the bottom right corner, hit that 3-dot icon, go to playback speed and set it up to 1.5x. Maybe you'll still be able to understand what I'm saying. Maybe not. We'll see. So, we have here the Blackview BV9500 Pro, which is a really long name to say compared to something like LG G5. So, I'm going to call this phone Bob. This is Bob here. Now, Bob has some pros and cons. Now, the pros list is pretty long, the cons list is pretty short, but there's also the in-betweens, the so-sos, the, man, I wish they'd have done this just a little bit differently. Those will be lumped in with the cons list. I'll do the pros in one video, the cons in another, and we'll go from there. So, what we have here is Bob. Bob is a ruggedized Android 8.1 Oreo smartphone with a two-way radio. The two-way radio is the selling feature, but we'll get to that in a minute. First off, this is a phone. This was a phone to replace a phone. Two-way radios aside, it's a phone. I don't care too much about what it's capable of doing as long as it can make reliable phone calls when I need to. And that it does. It's an excellent call quality phone. I have not had any issues with call quality. I have been able to hear the person on the other end with perfect clarity. Almost never have to have them repeat themselves, and when I do, it's because of background noise on their end. I've used this phone in some pretty loud environments. I've used it in pretty quiet environments. I've had to turn the volume down. It gets so loud. I've had to turn the volume up, and I'm able to hear people just fine without going to max volume. And that is rare. All of the other phones that I have, even on max volume, I have difficulty hearing people. Not with this one. With this one, sometimes I'm even holding the phone away from my head, and I can still hear the person on the other end without any issue. So, Bob here is a full netcom device, and I think, I really should have researched this a little bit, but I think what that means is when you go and you look at what networks you can get the phone on, it will work on all of them. Now, all of my other phones, I'm a T-Mobile subscriber, so all of my other phones have been T-Mobile phones, and I can always see T-Mobile and AT&T. Because if you're in an area with no T-Mobile signal and you go roaming, you're going to be on AT&T's network. It's just a given. Those are the two main GSM providers in my area. Well, one thing I'm not used to seeing are Verizon and Sprint. If you are considering this phone and you are hesitant because you don't know if it'll work with Verizon or Sprint, I'm here to tell you, we've got Sprint and Verizon both on this thing. I've got T-Mobile. Now, last night I was also able to see T-Mobile 2G, but we've got T-Mobile 4G and 3G. We know 2G will work when it's there. We've got Verizon 4G, Sprint 4G, and AT&T 4G. And then we've got a couple of no-names that are just numbers. I suspect that these are Mint and Cricket, maybe a Metro PCS, although I know that they use T-Mobile's towers, so they should show up as T-Mobile. But I don't know who these other providers are, but let's just say they're probably the no-names. Regardless, we have Verizon, Sprint, AT&T, T-Mobile, the four major boys in the town, and they're all on this device. So if that's what you're worried about, I think you'll be okay. I don't know this for a fact because I'm not a Verizon or Sprint subscriber. I cannot say that this phone will undoubtedly work on those networks, but it looks like it will. So we've got a full netcom device. We've got decent signal strength. There are two offices in my building where we have trouble with anybody's device getting signal. The LG G5 that I use at my desk had one tiny little area, in fact about the size of the phone, that would receive reliably 1 or 2 bars of signal. And 9 times out of 10 it would go to 2G to do it. This device works anywhere in my office. My coworkers are jealous. In fact, I've even used that. One of my coworkers is going to buy himself the BV9600 Pro. We'll call that one Steve. So my coworker loves Bob so much that he's convinced himself to buy Steve once he's got the money in the bank. And Steve's not an expensive device anyway. I think it's about the same as Bob here. So anywhere in my office, Bob has pretty good signal strength. And I've seen Bob drop down to 3G one time, but I've never seen Bob go to 2G in my office. So that's a good sign. We've got another office in my building where nobody gets signal ever, not even my LG G5. Well, guess what? Bob's a trooper in there. I get 4G in that room. Granted, it's only 1 or 2 bars, but I still get 4G. People are jealous, I'm telling you. So it's got a pretty good radio in it as far as the GSM goes. But it's also a pretty rugged device. And those are the two things I was really looking for. Yes, the selling feature is the two-way radio. I'm an FCC licensed ham radio operator. I wanted a two-way radio in my phone. That was a no-brainer for me. But if I didn't have the two-way radio, if I didn't know those existed, I still would have bought this device for its ruggedness, its, I don't know what to call it, the up-to-datedness, the currentness of the device. All of the hardware is recent. All of the software is recent. It's the latest model of a lot of things. It's not a flagship, but it's decent, you know. I love the look of it. I love the feel of it. It's the perfect size for my hand. Yes, it's a heavy device compared to something like a piece of paper, but, you know, when I'm talking, I use my hands, and other phones, they fly out of my hand because they don't have the weight to stay in my hand, and because they've got curved screens that I cannot grip like I can in this one. This one here, you have this bezel all the way around it. And there are people who complain about that. Ew, it's an ugly black bar on the side of my screen. I don't like that. Well, you know what? It's actually a good thing. All of those edge devices, the curved screens, you grip the phone to where you don't send it flying across the room when you move your hand, and you're going to wind up activating the edge feature of that device. 9 times out of 10, it's a little shortcut bar that pops open from the side, and you launch whatever app is under your finger pad at that point in time. I hate that. I hate picking up my wife's phone because I've got to be so dainty with it to prevent that from happening. We'll be sitting there on the way to a job site, and I'll pick up her phone. We'll have it in Google Maps, getting turn-by-turn directions. Next thing I know, it's in another app. I looked away for just a moment, talking to my wife. I move my hands. I look down, and I'm looking at a different app. I don't know how that happened, where it came from. Well, I do know, after I think about it, it's the Edge feature. But I hate that, and I don't have to worry about that with this phone because of this bezel here and the fact that the screen is flat. Guess what? If you're looking for fads and gimmicks, don't get this phone because this is not a gimmicky phone. Everything on here is business. Flat screen, one-piece glass. I don't have a curve. I can get a screen protector that will actually stay on it. I don't have to worry about activating edge features. It's great. I love it. I love the look of it. I think I mentioned that. This, I think it's aluminum. It could be titanium. It could be, I don't know. It could be any metal. But I love the look of it. It's got this gunmetal kind of, almost a glitter. It's just this, like a powder coat look to it that is, I dare say, masculine. It's a manly phone, as phones go. It's not dainty. It's not. It's a tool. That's what it is. This phone is a tool. I'm going to go ahead and turn the screen off. It's rugged. It can take just about anything you throw at it. It's heavy. It is a tool. And that's what a phone should be. It should be something that you don't have to worry about protecting all the time. It's easy to be disassembled. You've got 4 screws on this side, 4 screws on this side, and 4 in the corners. These 2 come out anyway because that's where your SIM card and your SD card go, so this won't even be on there when you start taking it apart. But if you needed to replace the battery in it, or if, for heaven's help you, if your motherboard failed or whatever and you could find a replacement, 12 screws and your phone comes apart. It's great. You don't have to worry about cracking the screen with a spudger or trying to pry things apart. So that, none of that nonsense. Just take the screws apart and it pops open. So it's maintainable. It's sturdy. It's got some heft to it. It lets you know. If this thing falls out of your pocket, you're going to know it's gone. Okay, you're going to feel a difference, and I love that about it. The antenna, not necessary. If you're not using the two-way radio, you don't need to have the antenna on it. But I leave the antenna on it because I'm almost always got the radio open listening to something. So what else can I tell you about it? Well, we've got a 10,000 milliamp hour battery in it. Unfortunately, it's not really. It's 9,000 milliamp hour. We'll rate later. Right here, 9,000 milliamp hours. All of the advertising, all of the videos, all of the literature says 10,000, so I feel kind of cheated. We're only talking a 10% difference, but that's still 1,000. That's a third of what this phone here I'm recording this with can handle. So if this phone would last 6 hours, that's 2 hours of charge for this phone. I don't know how long this one will last because I've had this thing off the charger for 19 hours and it was still at 54% battery. So I could probably go 38 hours before killing this phone. That's a day and a half and a couple of hours on top of it. And of course, you're not going to be using the phone constantly. You got to sleep sometime, so it'll probably last you a couple of days. Me, I hardly use the phone, so it'd probably last me a couple of weeks. Not really. But we're talking 1,000 milliamp hour difference from what they advertise and what you get. I'm not a fan of that. But aside from that, it's a decent device. Battery will last you. If you're like me in a hurricane zone, you lose power during a hurricane, and let's say your power's out for a couple of days, you're not going to worry about this device going dead. One feature of that, though, being a 10,000 milliamp hour battery, if it's fully charged and if I put it in power save mode and I'm not using the two-way radio on it any more than I absolutely have to, and I'm not using any of the apps on it, I know the battery will last a while. I can get a USB on-the-go adapter and charge somebody else's device. If they just need an hour or so of use out of their device to get them from where they're at to somewhere where they can charge it more permanently, or just to get out of the area so that they can get somewhere that actually has power, you know, I can do that. I can give somebody a little bit of the charge off of my battery without killing my device to do it. And I'll have ample power left over for myself. So I like that. From an emergency services perspective, that's a good thing. The size, it's a perfect size for my hand. I've still got my T-Mobile G1, and it is smaller than this area of the screen that's dark gray. You know, and we're talking like almost like holding a candy bar. It's so tiny. But this thing here is a perfect fit for my hand. I'm 6 feet tall. I've got decent sized hands. I need a device that will fit me. Now, if you're, you know, more petite, you might have difficulty holding this. I don't know. But even I've got some space here. So if you've got a petite hand and your hand grip is a little smaller, I think you'd still be able to hold this device. It's not that big a deal. It's a good size. It's a good weight. You know, I can't really complain about any of that. They say that it's waterproof. I'm not going to test that. I'll be honest with you. I paid $430 for this device. I'm not going to risk frying it by dipping it in a tank. If it happens to fall into a lake one day and I pull it out and it still works, I'll be pleasantly surprised and even impressed. But I'm not going to risk it, okay? I think that it probably would survive. The speaker holes are what worry me. I'm not too worried about the USB because I think it would sense a short in there and turn off any voltage that might be going to it. Same with the TRRS hole there, the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. But I don't know if that speaker is sealed on the inside of the body. I haven't had the phone apart. I haven't looked at videos where they've done teardowns, so I don't know how well that's sealed. I just don't trust it yet. Maybe after I've seen the inside of it, I might trust it enough to actually do an underwater test, but that's not happening anytime soon. And I think I'm going to get my money's worth out of the phone before I do test it. Honestly, though, I cannot find anything really to complain about with this phone. It's rugged, it's got full netcom, it's got great signal strength anywhere I go with it, plus the two-way radio. I mean, let's face it, as a ham radio operator, I love that I can get on the 70 centimeter band. I love that I can get on the FRS band if I need to. If I ever get a GMRS license, I can use the GMRS on this. I can listen to the local fire rescue dispatch. I can listen to the local news producers and their backstage. They've got their little, it's like an open mic that they keep running 24/7 transmitting. You can hear them in the back producer's area, telling the cameras where to point, telling the people on the set, where they need people to stand for their next, whatever scene that they're doing. You hear them counting down to the point where they switch from one camera to the next. It's pretty cool. And you can get the news 10 seconds before anybody else does. And if somebody says a wordy dirt, they don't filter it. It's great. But honestly, that's just a tiny little thing. Really what I bought the phone for was a two-way radio, 70-centimeter ham band, and the fact that it's rugged. And on those counts, it's 10 stars. The main reason it's 8 stars are the cons list. And I'm going to do that in another video, so stay tuned. It'll be up eventually, maybe tomorrow. But until then, I can recommend this phone. My name's CJ, and this is the Tech Addict's Attic.